Welcome to the Level Up podcast presented by The Ultimate Gamer, a show that features conversations with the trailblazers, thought leaders, risk takers, decision makers, celebrities, athletes, and investors who are defining the gaming and eSports space. On Level Up, we take a journey into this dynamic industry and start to decode and reveal who and what's making news. It's about connecting, and it's about sharing the stories and vision of the people who make gaming and esports a global phenomenon. As we do in every episode, we'd like to thank The Ultimate Gamer as the visionary and catalyst behind Level Up. The Ultimate Gamer is an esports and gaming, entertainment, technology, culture, and lifestyle organization with the intention of discovering the best gamer in the world. Connecting and celebrating gamers and gaming is at the core of The Ultimate Gamer's mission. And now, please welcome your host, student of the game and connector to the esports community, Tommy Knapp.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tommy Knapp, and this is an all-new episode of the Level Up podcast presented by The Ultimate Gamer. On today's show, I have a conversation with Rebecca Longawa, founder and president of Happy Warrior and an esports advisor to Stadia Ventures and Brickhouse Ventures. Rebecca told me she has a love for people, which makes her a natural connector. She also talks about how her dad inspired her brand, Happy Warrior, and how esports continues to foster connection. With over 20 years of experience in sports marketing and innovation, Rebecca runs her own consultancy agency, is an advisor for 3 global sports tech investment firms, and an advisory board member for a number of sports tech startups. She is a go-to for both brands and athletes looking for strategic introductions, ambassador partnerships, post-career advice, and personal branding. Our conversation starts in gerbil tunnels, continues into the VC world of esport investment, and crosses the finish line with the evolution of connecting through esports and esports-esque systems and platforms. Join me now as I enter a lively and spirited dialogue with the talented Rebecca Longawa. I do have a question right off the top, though.
Yeah.
Your LinkedIn profile, you have a picture of a rhinoceros and a basketball player.
Yes, I do.
Yes, and I'm just wondering where does that come from? What does it stand for?
What a dangerous photo shoot, I must say. Bringing that rhino in, cleaning up after it was the worst.
Who's the basketball player?
The basketball player is Chris Smith.
Okay.
Or Craig Smith. Chris Smith. Wow. Craig Smith, and he played for the Wolves for a few years, and his nickname was the Rhino. Okay. So that was a shoot that we did. I think maybe it was for a postcard or something. That it was just a funny picture. It was Photoshop. We didn't really bring a rhino into Target Center.
No, but I love it. I mean, it's something you want to talk about. And how did you use that for him specifically? Was it used to any kind of campaign or?
It was for the team. Like it was like a team photo shoot that we did.
Okay.
So part of my job when I was at the Timberwolves was working with the NBA photographer. So interestingly, and not a lot of people realize this, the teams themselves don't hire the team photographer. The NBA kind of owns all of those relationships, and they assign photographers to each of the teams. So
Okay.
they manage that relationship. But there's a lot of, nuances in regards to, from an internal perspective, imagery that you need. I would help kind of identify what we needed internally and then work in tandem with the NBA photographer assigned to the Wolves, which was David Sherman. I mean, he's been shooting there now for like 25 years. But part of my job was working with our internal creative director, our creative team to figure out, what are they trying to achieve, whether it's for season ticket renewals or sales or big ad campaigns. And then I was kind of that voice between the NBA photography team and our internal staff.
What specifically was your role there, and when was that?
I've been involved with the Wolves for so many years. I first was introduced to them when I was working at Space 150, which is an advertising agency. It's all digital agency in the Twin Cities. I started working with them in like 2002 or 2003. Okay. And we worked with the Timberwolves to redo their website and quite a few different initiatives. I mean, at that time, all of the league websites were very just content heavy, article heavy, not rich imagery, no video. And so we created like a video player, a little image engine where you could upload various images that would, cycle through on the homepage. Very groundbreaking at the time. Now it's like, oh, cool, right? But at that time it was we really believed in enhancing the experience. And I worked really, really closely with their CMO on really re-architecting the entire experience. And then for years after that, even after I left Space 150 in 2005, I freelanced for the Timberwolves on just a bunch of, creative projects, and worked with their photography team for a large number of years before going in-house with the Wolves in 2011. So in 2011, I joined the team as a brand manager, which is just a name for whatever needs to be done, any type of special project. I was kind of tasked with overseeing that. The entire photo team I oversaw, our creative team from more of like a project management or special project management perspective, and really just a conduit between sales and marketing, ensuring that what sales needed to drive revenue, which is the most important part of a sports organization, that we were servicing them the way that that they needed, or that would be the best for who their target audience was, whether it's on the season ticket general everyman, or whether it's really high net worth individuals in our premium packages, and our corporate partners as well. So touched kind of everything.
That's a really important job though, because you've got to, you're the one who's responsible for keeping the culture, the message has to fit the culture and the brand.
Right.
When you're putting it out there to the audience.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, consistency, when I first started contracting with the team, there was we were having just image issues. The digital revolution had happened, and they went from having access to just maybe 100 to 200 images when they were shooting film, to all of a sudden having thousands and thousands of pictures. And the NBA photographer brought on a second shooter. So now you've got two people shooting digital, and everything was, the process is the photographers are picking their selects that they love the best, and those are going to the league, and the league is using those, and they're tagging them, and they've got all these descriptions, and it's the best of the best of the action shots. But you need pictures that show corporate sponsor activation, that show, the special fan engagement before and after the game, the halftime shows. They capture all of that. It was kind of being dumped into one gigantic repository based on game. And then if you open a game folder, then there would be each quarter, and that was it. And so when I started working with them, I came up with a methodology to have folder systems that first renaming all of the images with a code so that we knew what game it was. And then from there, going and removing anything that is not relevant, either stuff that's out of focus or really focused on the other team members, and then sorting everything out by the experience, the fan engagement, the corporate sponsors, halftime shows. Each individual player had their own folder. All of the events that were special events were all tagged separately. And
nobody had done that before you? Nobody had organized that in any kind of
No, manner? But I mean, this was when I started doing that was like 2004, 2005. Okay. So, there wasn't really an easy solve. And over the years, we looked for some tools that would be, make things a little bit more efficient. But I don't know if they ever pulled the trigger on anything, but they were so cost prohibitive for, based on man hours. Because once you get into a flow, you can go through, 5,000 images in a couple of hours. Right.
Yeah. You just quickly. So are the T-Wolves right now, are they involved? They're involved in 2K. Are you involved with them at all on the 2K side?
I'm not. I'm a huge fan. They're a phenomenal 2K team. They've got one of the coolest training facilities. We have skyway systems in the Twin Cities here. So you can walk from building to building through these little gerbil tunnels in the sky, which is really fun. But their little training facility is all open window, and and it's connected through the Skyway to 3 of the largest parking ramps, the City of Minneapolis parking ramps. So I'd say 30,000 people walk past that space every single day, pre-COVID. 30,000 people are walking by it every day. It's a beautiful, really cool space.
It's not in the arena at all. It's completely separate.
No, it's in the same building as it's a multi-level building that has the Timberwolves and Lynx practice facilities in it. Mayo Clinic has an orthopedic center and training facility there. The front office of the Timberwolves and Lynx is in that space. And then the 2K, they've got that training center there, and their staff is in that same building as well. So it's a big multi-use space. It's right across the street from the Target Center where they perform.
Okay.
The 2K teams, they perform in New York exclusively. Now, I don't know. I'm not really sure how the 2K league is structured.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I just finished a conversation with Famous, who's the head coach of the Heat Check, and he was saying they're playing from home right now, and it's a challenge because they're not flying to Brooklyn, and supposedly they just built out a brand new studio in Times Square as well. So that's exciting from the 2K side, and all the players will be going there, but not at this point right now until we're done with the pandemic and things go back to whatever the new normal is.
For sure. And I think 2K's, in comparison to a lot of the other esports competitive, it's harder, I think, to get the level of fan engagement that you would desire. And I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that all have different theories around what that is. I think not being able to integrate the pro players at a level in which would be really exciting for a fan could be, in my eyes, one of the larger barriers that they've got. But it's interesting because we also have the Minnesota Rocker in our backyard here, the professional Call of Duty team. And I feel like the Rocker get a lot more press. They get a lot more, just more people are talking about them. There's a bigger buzz around it. I feel like there's not a lot of people who even understand that. Not only in Minneapolis do we have a 2K team, but we're the world champions. So it's bizarre to me that more people aren't talking about them or getting engaged with them as a team. But
so there was no parade down the streets of the Twin Cities for the
I wasn't invited to one. I didn't hear about it.
That's too bad. That's one of those things that even if it's a small one, it's one of those things, do it 2 blocks instead of the whole city.
Right. We have had quite a few parades for our Minnesota Lynx. They're a pretty phenomenal basketball team. So we've been lucky there, but we haven't had any other major celebrations for a very long time. I think the Twins World Series 91 is the last time we've had a
championship
in the men's sports here. Our women step it up.
Before we jump completely into esports, I do want to just kind of talk about the fact that you worked with the Timberwolves, and when you look at the Timberwolves, because like I said, I was just had that conversation with Famous, the resources the Timberwolves have, and then the Pro 2K team. Do you see, because you were on the marketing side, do you see that they leverage that, even though they can't work with the players specifically? Does the front office work with the team, or is the team all on its own? It has its own coach, its own players, its own marketing team, its own sales team, or do they really leverage the NBA team?
They're kind of a sub brand. While they do have obviously a separate coach, separate GM type of a scenario, which would be more of like, similar to a basketball ops, they share a front office. So all of their resources are done internally. They don't have a dedicated team, dedicated resource. There are marked individuals within the existing team that are assigned to work on that, but they have other roles as well. Okay. So, and it makes sense, from a revenue standpoint and the volume of work. I think there could be ways to maybe create just a content team that's really hyper-focused on maximizing the amount of content getting pushed out. I'd want to see, if I was there, I'd want to see what's the appetite, I guess. If people are really engaging with content, then maybe you keep increasing that, because that can show value to a potential sponsor. But I think it's been the toughest thing in this market in the Twin Cities is just educating people about what is esports versus gaming, who are the key audience personas that really match up with that brand's target audience? And then how do you create really special messaging or activations that's going to resonate and really create a whole new crop of avid brand followers?
Having said that, I love what you just said, because I find, to me, since I've been in the space over the last 3 years, it's an education process for me to the people I'm speaking to. When I talk to somebody that's endemic to the space, obviously I'm usually getting the information from them. They're teaching me. They're the experts. But most of the people I speak to, whether it's a parent, whether it's an administrator, whether it's an executive, they don't know much about esports. And so I like what you said, esports versus gaming. I would like to hear how you explain that to somebody. And when you explain it, do you have a different conversation with an executive or somebody that's looking to spend money in the space as opposed to a parent or even a college administrator?
Right. So I do speak to all three of those audiences. I think from a college perspective, I'll work backwards. From a college perspective, what a great recruitment tool, gaming and esports. First of all, it's an entire ecosystem, the esports and gaming world, with job opportunities that are multi-layered, from sales and marketing to account management to the creation of games themselves, to being an entertainer, whether you're a streamer or someone who's generating content through YouTube, doing, analyzing, or being a caster. There's opportunities with graphics and design. There's opportunities with voiceover talent. There's opportunities in music recording specific for games. So if you can understand that as a college recruiter or administrator and start really compiling degrees that are gaming focused and esports focused, you can attract a lot of really great talent into your university that then, if you can plug in the esports ecosystem and those resources, the industry resources, create a pathway for them for a career, that's exciting. And to draw a comparison to basketball, there's a lot of people who love basketball. They love to play. They know they're not going to be a pro basketball player, but man, wouldn't that be cool if they could work in the NBA? And so they go after specific career paths in sports marketing, kinesiology, to try and work within the league that they love. So it's bigger than, I don't want my kid to play all these video games because he's not going to be the next ninja or the next silly. I just, I want him to be focused on school. If you can, so to the parent side, if you can, as a parent, come alongside your kids and really understand that this could be a pathway to a STEM-based career, or an entertainment career if you're on the event side, what a great way for you to open up your child's world into their love of playing video games for a career in esports. And then when it comes to the corporate side, really it always comes down to the same things they're always measuring. What makes you successful? What are your goals? A lot of times I'll talk to a brand and they'll say, well, everyone's telling us we should get into esports. Well, how do we do that? Well, what are your goals? You don't want to, it's not like, I think the approach for many has been the same as maybe sponsoring like a music festival where you just set up a booth and you hand out some samples and you go home. This is a huge opportunity because of the digital imprint and the interconnectivity of this robust community that's always engaging with one another. It's not like they show up to one thing and they're never interacting again. If you can be authentic in the space, in the gaming and esports space as a brand, and you can tie how you're going to engage with that brand, your brand within the space, back to your overall business goals and marketing objectives, you're going to win every time. But you have to really take the time and energy to understand who that audience is. They're hyper sophisticated, and be there in a way that actually matters to that audience. And it's really the same type of marketing tactics that most corporate brands use. who is your demographic? Do you look at this opportunity and find a clone in the space, or do you stretch your demographic to something entirely new but not alienating your existing fan base? And then talking to them in a way that really marries up your brand with who they are. You don't talk to them, you don't talk at them, you have a conversation with them. And that's I think where a lot of people are just getting maybe lazy, or they don't want to have to hire for it. It's hard to understand. You don't just take somebody on your staff that likes to play video games and put them in charge of that effort. The industry is way more sophisticated than that.
Can you give us an example or two of a couple of companies that have really nailed it, that have kind of come into the eSports space and have done a great job of getting their brand message across, and it feels authentic?
Early on, Korea Air did a really cool activation where they hosted a competition in an airplane hangar, and it was really beautifully done. And all of the content around it was thoughtful and extremely well produced. So that would be an early example. Jack in the Box has done a really good job of kind of inserting their character into the space and creating some fun little moments. I think there's a lot of room for non-endemic brands to really get into the space. And one that stands out for me is like Turtle Wax. You don't think about gaming and Turtle Wax, but if you understand the culture of a lot of gamers, they love their cars, and they want to take really good care of what they have. So it's a perfect partnership. That's a brand you can get behind. Insurance companies are hopping on. I think Rocket Mortgage has been doing a fantastic job getting into the space. There's so many misconceptions about what it is to be a gamer and what this industry is all about. And when the brands really take the time to understand the audience and how robust it is, then they can really open up a floodgate of opportunities to get into the space authentically.
So is that one of the things you do? And we can talk about obviously you do some consulting. The work that you do, are you reaching out to these executives? How do you find your work? Are you a consultant? What's Happy Warrior? What's Stadia Ventures? I want you to kind of bridge that gap and get us into that a little bit.
So I really work in three key areas. So I'm a consultant, and I work with brands on getting them into the space. I work with teams or players or streamers on growth strategy, branding strategy, really strategic connections within the space. A lot of that on the team side has to do with technology. How are we going to, esports is so new that there's a lot of tech that needs to start kind of filtering into the space. And that brings me to the third thing, which is startups and investment strategy. So I work with a number of VC firms, and you mentioned Stadia Ventures, and they're the first that I started working with as an advisor and judge. Stadia, Brickhouse, these are VC firms that are heavily involved in investing in sports technology and esports and entertainment tech. And I serve as a connector. So when startups reach out to me, I look at a lot of startup decks. I'll help a startup from a consulting standpoint on if I think that what they've got is really sticky, really good, I'll maybe help them fine tune their messaging, their tone of voice, find gaps within their investment deck, and tell them, go do this homework. Here's 5 things you really need to add in order for somebody to pay attention to you. And then as these application windows open for the cohorts, which are accelerator programs, and Stadia's application process is just open for their fall cohort. They're twice a year. The best of the best of all these startups that are reaching out for investment and mentorship, we listen to them. They present to us live. We're going to do everything digital this next cohort, so they'll present to us through streams like this. And we do all this research on the Stadia side. They do a lot of research and really dive in on a lot of the financials. But for someone like myself, we help judge and make selections. And then depending on the startup itself, then a few of us are tasked to be official mentors for them, and we really help the growth of that startup over a few months of planning.
And where are they typically when you're talking about startups? And I mean, I'm sure
all
every
over
single
the
one's
world.
different, all over
Yeah,
the world, but also different stages. Like, what stage are they in the startup process?
We like to see some marked success at Stadia. Now, Brickhouse Ventures out of Vancouver, they're even earlier than Stadia, so they will start talking to companies at ideation who haven't even started building out the back ends of some of the tech. Some of these companies are wearables. We've had quite a few orthopedic type wearable companies come and pitch. Anything that enhances player performance, fan engagement, or the internal processes is really some stuff that's sticky. Now, working within traditional sports, we're interacting with this type of tech every single day. I mean, we really saw a spike in the early 2000s in utilizing sports technology in the way that we do business. If you think about having paper tickets and then now having an app on your phone, it's a great example of what sports technology is. In the eSports world, some of these things can be easily adapted to fit for eSports, but there's a lot of needs that have been identified in this space that people are clamoring to solve those gaps right now. There's a lot of really exciting eSports tech, not only from like coaching and training or tracking AI to check your actual performance, but also league management, financial management on the back end, contract management, creative tools that help spin your stream. There's just so much emerging technology that really helps gain efficiency, data aggregation, and just overall, foundational stability industry-wide. And that's where I get excited. That's the kind of stuff that I love to see, because it helps move the entire industry forward, regardless of the game or the player, the streamer. These are things that really have a high amount of integrity in the long run, and they're heavily scalable.
Have you seen any projects come across your desk that you supported that have done extremely well or
yeah, I'm
successful?
Working with two right now that I'm really excited about. One is called Mission Control, and it's like rec leagues for gamers. And if you think about, if you want to join a competition just for fun, and you kind of go online and maybe you pay a little bit to kind of join a thing, but you're not the best at it, it can get frustrating, so what they've done is it's basically creating a fantasy league / rec league with people in your network, like your own friends, or maybe people maybe you don't have friends that play the same game that you want to play. You can match up maybe through like Mission Control's Discord or your own Discord channels that you're a part of. And you can kind of create your own team, kind of come up with the parameters are going to be. You can wage bets if you want to, but then you play for your designated time through Mission Control's platform. And if someone's a big winner at the end, then you can cash out through that, which is cool. But you don't even have to wager bets. It's just a really great way to engage with people. Where they're finding a large amount of success is within communities that already exist. So Boys and Girls Clubs, Special Olympics, those types of organizations are really gravitating towards this, especially in the time of COVID, because they can still foster like this whole sense of community through gaming in a safe space, and kind of have a little bit of control too about, it's co-branded, it's their initiative, but it's utilizing this platform. So that's an exciting one.
And do they can you play almost any title through Mission Control? And do they provide leaderboards and are there exciting things on the back end that kind of create that competitive side of things, even if it's not at the highest level?
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of community type involvement and engagement and things that you can do. If you're a team, even if you're a pro franchise team and you decided to work with Mission Control, you could you could say, okay, the best of the best within these brackets, you win, whatever gear, you win this Call of Duty sweatshirt or whatever it may be. So that's pretty cool. In terms of the amount of titles, they're a very early company. So they're still, boots on the ground, like busting their butts, expanding this thing. It's kind of taken off like wildfire with everything happening with COVID. The long-term vision with them would be also to be in brick and mortar. And they've had some success with some brick and mortar opportunities where they can have almost like LAN centers. So if people are coming into these spaces, they can also sit and use this tool. So it kind of creates like a program within a retail space that is kind of hands-off for the retailer, but drives people in and keeps them there for a bit. So that's an exciting evolution. But
that's one of the areas that when I first looked at the space, you look from the top down in the pyramid and you look at the eSports side, the pro side, then the college side, which is just building out. And then you've got your high schools, which are, again, just building out. But the foundational level where everybody comes from, just like in traditional sports, is that youth level and creating a recreational and then competitive and then academies that kind of lead up. And in that space has really been lacking. Again, we're in its infancy stages. So that's been lacking. And it's great that these guys have done something, because one of the biggest areas, I say with my kids, right? They play basketball, football, baseball, soccer. They play any of those traditional sports. It's organized. They go out and they practice 2 or 3 times a week. Then they have their games on the weekend against other teams. In Fortnite, it doesn't exist for them, right? They don't have a structure or an organization or somebody who's actually leading that. It sounds like maybe they're hitting that space.
I think they're definitely hitting that space, and then some. I mean, I think there's, you could be in your 40s and really love to play a certain title and get your buddies together and compete. That's where I think the wagering, the fantasy side of it, that's definitely for the older audience. I mean, I think of this brand from an archetype as like the everyman brand. It's for everybody. There's a space for everybody to win with what they've built out, which is very special. There's a lot of things that are very catered to just the pros or just a pro team. This is for whether you're old or young. There's definitely because you're creating your own community. And you mentioned soccer. A soccer club could easily gravitate to use Mission Control to keep their kids connected playing FIFA through this engine as well. So it's just a really kind of it's fun. It's just a really fun rec type of a platform, but scalability for everyone definitely has monetization is there for them. Another one that I'm excited about from an infrastructural standpoint is called eSpat, ESPAT.
Say that again.
eSpat.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe they say eSpat. I would say it's eSpat. That's what I say. I'm in charge now.
So what's that stand for?
It does stand for something, and I totally don't even remember what it stands for. But the acronym does stand for something. But what the leadership there came from NFL and Getty, and they really saw a need to have a repository of all of the imagery and videography within the esports space on a global scale. So they work with content creators, hire them to go out and shoot, and they have an entire engine that then can feed that back editorially, and then working on launching a commercial version of that as well. So what I really love about what they're building from the commercial standpoint is having a background in advertising. You might have a client that really wants to reach the esports audience, right? Say it's some type of a cheese ball. So you have this cheesy puff cheese ball client, and they really want to get into esports, but they don't want to have to, sponsor a team or sponsor a player or work with a ton of influencers. What they could do is utilize this existing content, buy it for commercial use, create a creative ad campaign that is attracting the audience because it's real imagery, it's gamers playing, it's competitive, And then you can do either a print campaign or even a digital campaign. You could geolocate it over Fortnite World Cup if you wanted to. There's a lot of room for brands to think out of the box and in non-traditional ways in regards to engaging with the community. Really, you're engaging with a specific demographic in a space that they already love. So I think there's a lot of authenticity to that as well, if done right. So yeah, I like it. I really love what they're building, and they're working with some of the top content creators in the world. So the quality is just amazing.
Off the charts. Well, one of the things that you just mentioned, it's kind of like you're seeing the lines blur between our reality and this gaming reality, and now this metaverse. And I keep going back to, because I'm so fascinated, and I had a conversation with Darcy Lawrence about this yesterday, how you can actually do your advertising in the game, right? Like that's that crossover, and that's that ability through technology to do that. But what are your thoughts just on the entertainment side, the metaverse that's being created, for instance, with Fortnite and Travis Scott performing in the game itself? And then as I was saying, my kids were in the game as an avatar, and they're just completely caught up in that new environment, in that new reality. I mean,
Right.
what do you think about that space? It's mind numbing to me, and it just makes my head spin. So I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to think about this as there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of culture crossover, obviously within the music industry, but the skateboarding culture in gaming has a huge intersection. These are not one-dimensional individuals that are into gaming. These are multi-dimensional individuals. They're all of us, right? So what are the ways that you can infuse an entire culture into the space instead of playing video games the end-all be-all of the culture? It's bigger than that, right? So infusing music that gamers are really into, like the Marshmallow Effect, like when that whole world happened, that was a big game changer. And I think a lot of people really started paying close attention to what was happening in the space once that happened. But I think, brands integrating, like the Nike integration, and utilizing some of the top performers and top skaters in the world. We talk about skateboarding, Tony Hawk, and his impact in the gaming industry has been around for a multitude of years. So I think we'll only see more of it. Right now, there tends to be an oversaturation of activity happening. It's really hard to kind of even stay on top of what's going on, because my phone rings with people who represent pro athletes who will say, we want to get this person into eSports, and I'll ask what games they play. Well, they don't really play, and they don't have a console. And well, that's awesome that they want to be in the space because it's viable right now, but they're going to have to invest and spend some time doing the hard work in order to really get some traction, or you're kind of setting them up for failure, But there's a lot of pro athletes that are extremely talented, athletes that are also extremely talented gamers and streamers. We've got Trevor May, who's a pitcher for the Minnesota Twins, and I follow him on Twitch, so I get little notifications on my phone when he's live, and man, that guy's on it, right? Like he knows how to generate content, and the continuity is there, the consistency is there. So when you've got guys like that, or JT Brown, who plays here for the Wild, they're authentically in the space. They belong in the space. They are the space. They also happen to play a traditional sport, but they are true competitors. They're truly in this space in a really authentic way. And I think that is going to add huge amount of brand value ongoing for both of them. And neither of them are like the biggest, stars in their traditional sports. They're very talented athletes. But now look at the reach that they have. They've just tapped into an entirely new market. And that's a huge brand value for both of their teams as well. And for our local community, our gaming community and our sports community, to have people that are that invested in the gaming industry and have a wild amount of success with it. So I would see, from a traditional athlete standpoint, if they're really wanting to get into esports, they have to want to get into the space. They can't just be told, go do an esports thing. And if they really choose to build that brand up, there's equity there. It does take time, it takes dedication, but there's a big payoff on the back end for them.
And do you have a Rolodex in your brain of like the brands that you work with? And then when you see certain people like this that are very good at what they do you like, okay, this brand would work really well with this individual? And do you then marry those two together? Is that one of the roles that you have as a consultant?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that that's a huge, I don't spend a ton of time doing that. It's not like a goal of mine to do that. But yeah, I've done that on the traditional side as well. I had a brand reach out to me that was actually in another state that was expanding into the Twin Cities marketing, was looking for an influencer, and we picked around some ideas, and I was able to help make that connection for them and bring that athlete and his team, his agent to the table, and they were able to work out a great deal. I'm not proactively making lists of any sort, but some things just feel really, really natural. I also feel like for a lot of brands, it's almost better to look at things at a much higher level than a granular player or streamer or even a team. It really just depends on the fit. There's huge opportunities for brands to just be in the space if they want to dedicate and grow. For a larger brand, create an esports internal division within your sports marketing team. If you're a brand that has a sports marketing team, then layer in some esports content creators and make your brand a part of the space. There's no reason why it can't be. Red Bull's in every space, and they're in it as Red Bull. They also, obviously get involved in a lot of huge events and even create some of their own. There's huge opportunities within esports space for brands to do that also. But there's large organizations within esports like Collegiate Star League, where if you're a brand and you want to get into the space, you don't have to take a risk on a specific individual. You could do a partnership with Collegiate Star League or World Gaming Network, and now you're in front of millions. Collegiate Star League is in, I think, 1,500 or 1,800 colleges nationwide. And if you think about that as like clubs, esports clubs, esports teams at all of those facilities, you times that by how many individuals are participating. And then they have bracketed tournaments that are even broader reach that go into a world final or, a national final. That is, to me, like super sticky for a brand to get involved with, because now you already have a built-in blanketed audience, and the activation, is going to be done by a team that's been around for over 10 years, not just someone who's just starting out.
What do you think the challenges you were talking about, some of the players that have made the crossover, that have become actually very big personalities in the esports space, in the content space? What's the challenge? It's got to be because the teams typically that they come from, whether it's a Major League Baseball team or an NBA or an NFL team, they control, right, a ton of the messaging. You are the marketing side, so you control the brand. You want to make sure the message that gets out there fits your culture and exactly the message you're trying to get out to the community and to your fan base. So when these guys go off and they create their own personal brand on their own, how does the team restrict that at all? Or do they allow them to do things, or do they go in with certain parameters and guidelines, say, hey, listen, go ahead and build out, go play Call of Duty and build your fan base, but we would expect you to not use our logo? Or where are the restrictions and where's the freedom for that individual?
Gosh, I can't even answer that question, because this has evolved since I left working in pro sports. So this wasn't even a consideration at the time or on anybody's radar. So, that's a great question. I'd love to have the answer to that. I do know that there are definitely barriers in what types of sponsorships and endorsements that specific players can go after. as part of, being a part of a team. I'm not sure how any of that applies within the gaming industry. There has to be some type of oversight, I would imagine, just like they do on social. But yeah, I can't even answer that question.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm paraphrasing this. And again, I don't know that well, but there was when 2K came out with, and again, I don't know this completely, but it's interesting to me. LeBron's image, he has tattoos all over his body. And so when LeBron's avatar came out in 2K, supposedly some of those tattoos were visible. And from what I understand, the tattoo artist actually then, I believe, sued 2K because they didn't have the rights to use those images that the tattoo artist.
What?
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I never heard that.
Yeah. I'm going to Google it again after we get off the call so I can look into it more. Yeah, but it's fascinating to me because, again, that's where, and what you talked about earlier, which I loved on the education side and on the university side, is the law area in esports right now is it's exploding, right? There's so much going on, and it's a fascinating space. If you're an attorney, and I loved what you said because you hit like sales and marketing and human resource. I keep telling everybody, if you are a chiropractor, get into esports. Yeah. If you're an eye doctor, get into esports. If you're an attorney, get into, whatever you do, esports and gaming as a whole have blown up so much. I just think there's so much opportunity. And for somebody like yourself, so kind of walk me through that just a little bit, your projects. Like, how do you find your projects? Like, where is it just through networking? And I know you're a connector, like we talked about, and it's actually on your LinkedIn. How do you become a master connector?
Gosh, I've just always loved people. So I don't think there's nothing really contrived about me being a networker and a connector. I just really freaking love people so much. Like, that's been the hardest thing about being in quarantine is, I've made friends with so many people's dogs on walks these days. I can't handle it.
So true. It's so true.
So my personality, my entire life, even since being in elementary school, I've always been a disruptor. I've always been the kid who did a lot of wall sits or was sent in the hallway, because I just love to connect with people and talk with people and get ideas. I would hear something in a classroom. I remember all the way back to like 5th grade, hearing something in the classroom, being like super excited about it, wanted to talk about it more. Total disruptor, just absolutely the worst. So also when I was in school, you get like these group projects. I was always a project manager. I was always in charge of the project. I was the one like making sure that everyone had a role, everybody knew what they were doing, and staying on top of it and being the presenter. I took debate. I loved English class. I love people, love to get to know them, really truly interested in people, and building relationships. It just comes so authentically to me. I'm like a cheerleader of everyone. I just want to see people do amazing things and succeed. It's a passion of mine. I give a lot away, and I really started becoming a consultant because my phone kept ringing from people asking me to help them solve a problem or telling me about a problem, and I could identify that gap really well and then come up with a solution quite quickly. Even within advertising, even within client work years ago, I think one of my biggest strengths was taking a look at what the problem was, coming up with a solution, and then putting a plan of attack together like really quickly, just being able to see it. Almost like all of this information is being downloaded to your brain in a millisecond. That's going to take you 2 hours to write down. Like, I'm really blessed with that gift, and just the gift of loving on people. And I really miss being face to face. So because I'm able to retain so much information about people and listen and understand kind of what they do, what makes them tick, what they're great at, when I'm having a conversation with somebody else a year later, 2 years later, 5 days later, I'm like, ooh, I know what you need. You need to talk to Joe because Joe is XYZ, and he's going to be the person. He is the person that's going to be able to help you through it, right? Now I've been able to figure out kind of how to slow down a little bit and be more thoughtful and turn that into to work. But the majority of things that are coming to me are through building relationships, and someone's reaching out and asking if they can, pick my brain or have a conversation with me. Sometimes it turns into business. Sometimes it turns into business for somebody else. I really just want to help people be successful.
Well, I think that the one thing you said right at the beginning about you're genuinely interested in people. So I think right away I think that's the number one thing. It's funny, you and I talked last week, and we said we were kind of built from the same or cut from the same cloth. And when I was with the Marlins, I ran a program called the B2B, which was all about connecting the dots between leaders. And at one point they asked me to teach the team, the internal team, the sales team about networking. I'm like, I don't know how to teach networking. I just do it. Right. It was actually to go through the steps and the process of it. I didn't know, because so much of it is I genuinely love to listen to people, hear their stories, and then I love to connect them, like you said. So that's amazing. One of the things, so I think something that's important, and I have a mentor that says you can do something and it's a hobby, right? If you just do it, you enjoy it and it's fun. And for it to be a business, you need to make money. So as a consultant, how do you then determine which areas you're consulting, and then when do you take that to a monetizing factor? And do you create a service agreement? How does that work? Because I'm sure, like you said, you get a lot of stuff across your desk. You have to either pick and choose, or maybe sometimes you're like, I actually need some work right now. How do I monetize this?
It really depends on how deep somebody needs. Do you want me just to make a quick connection? Sometimes there's things where I'm like, I really wouldn't want to carry that all the way through. But, if someone's really looking for some hand holding or going shoulder to shoulder and walking them through, then I'll put together a retainer agreement. I've done some small little projects where, I recently did one for an online tournament. My client was looking for pro athletes and celebrities to join this tournament. And so it was basically a week's worth of work, and I charged my hourly rate and just tracked that, and it was great. Others are, they're really looking for, maybe they're completely new to eSports. Maybe it's a large company or a larger brand, and they really need a lot of hand holding. They're looking for strategic connections within the space. They're looking for me to document ideas from a marketing strategy and sales strategy. Because really, if you think about it, if you're a brand, if you're a company that's new to the space, depending on your organization, you kind of need both. You can't put together a marketing strategy without having a good sales strategy tied in that's going to be interconnected. So I can work and work with them. I have to really have there needs to be a lot of trust within that type of a relationship. So we usually do, NDAs, mutual NDAs, so that they can really open up about their existing marketing tactics, their existing audience personas, what's working for them, what's not working for them, who would be an ideal client within the esports space. And then I put together strategic thinking that really solves where do they fit best within the space. And it just varies. If you're a very Midwestern, brand that attracts moms in their 40s and 30s, probably not a red blood first-person shooter game would be the best go-to to try to get in front of that audience. You're maybe reaching your husbands and their teenage boys and girls, but you're not going to reach who you're trying to grow. Yeah, you're in the space, cool, but you're not in it authentically. So, with that, then maybe it's a Fortnite type of a relationship, or doing something with Twitch that's more blanketed, or picking specific influencers that are targeting the kids that are going to go to the mom. There's always a different pathway to mom, but you want to do it where you're not alienating them or upsetting them. So it really truly varies. A lot of times it's maybe a certain amount of hours per week on a 3-month retainer, and I'm going to help you solve your problem and get you plugged in. But a lot of times the ways that I'm monetizing are being able to make that strategic connection and just taking a finder's fee for that. That works pretty well as a consultant as well for me to be able to say.
What is your rate for a typical product? What would you say? What is your starting rate? Is it $100, $250, $20?
I mean, it really depends on the project.
Everything's customizable.
Everything's pretty customizable. I mean, I wouldn't charge a streamer who's looking for some brand help my hourly rate that I would charge to a corporate brand, and I would charge a team even a little bit different. It's kind of on a scale of the value of the information, right? Because you're shortcutting. For a brand, they're paying a higher amount because the strategy that I'm providing to them has a huge amount of value. The team is already in eSports, so they're looking for, some strategy, obviously, and some marketing tactics, maybe some sales tactics. But a lot of that to me is like second nature. It's super easy. It's not taxing my brain at like a super high level. And then for streamers, I mean, I've done packages that are pretty affordable to just do a quick turnaround brand refresh. On the startup space as well, I mean, what I would charge a startup in the space, I mean, I can really put together a beautiful brand package for, brand positioning, tone of voice, the look and feel, that kind of go-to-market package for them at a much more affordable rate than I would bring a traditional brand into the esports space with a branding and marketing tactic.
And is this all part of Happy Warrior? And where did the Happy Warrior brand come from?
It is, yeah. So Happy Warrior was just kind of a default when I kind of created it because I was doing a lot of freelance work, producing photo shoots, doing a lot of events. I love curating events. It's just amazing to do, especially high-end networking type events. I needed an umbrella to kind of go after that type of work. And I was working with a couple players at the time as well on their personal branding. So I was like, I should probably have a brand. And I was on my own. So I created Happy Warrior. The name comes from a poem that was hanging in my dad's den. When I was a child, my dad is a veteran of two wars, Vietnam and the Gulf War, and was a long-term National Guard soldier. And I really looked up to him in many ways. I did all the tomboy things with my dad, and followed him around the yard and liked to do hard things with him. So Happy Warrior is a poem that I think was written right after the Napoleon War, and it's all about holding on to your character as a human being, and not getting wrapped up in what war entails, and not letting it skew you from, doing God's work. And faith is super important to me, and having really strong values is important to me. So that's always been something that has been an anchor in my life, and especially working with professional athletes, it really resonated with me because they definitely can fall into this trap of idolatry, not only idolizing things themselves that really don't matter, but being looked at as an idol, and be all-consuming. And you don't want to lose what's really important, just especially right now, what's happening in the world is I think a lot of people are really recognizing what's truly important, the simple pleasures, those small pleasures in life, your family, your loved ones. So that's the lifeblood, the heart story of Happy Warrior.
That's fantastic. I want a couple things that I've just seen on your LinkedIn that are just topics that you've kind of posted recently. So I just wanted to touch base on those, and then maybe just hear about your specific habits, and then close out after that, because I think it's important for people to hear about the best practices and routines and habits of people that have had some success in the industry. So you posted about the CSL, or I think you reposted. Maybe it was posted by somebody else. Maybe it was Win Stocks, I'm not sure. But the CSL Grand Finals, and you said this is going to be epic. And you can't wait to watch it. It's at the end of this month, and it's part of the Star League. So why is it going to be epic? Well,
I think it's really interesting. There's some new partnerships that are being woven into that are kind of unexpected. That's TikTok's being a part of that activation, which is pretty cool. Collegiate Star League is, I mentioned, I referenced them before, they're really creating this huge community of collegiate gaming athletes. And it's just a really special space. It's a really safe, fun community. And these are young people who have been fighting for a voice for a long time. And Collegiate Star League has been able to identify that early on and really create this space for college athletes to come together. And being able to celebrate that every year is always really cool. I think that what they're doing is, in my mind, it's amazing. I think it's something that maybe could turn into an NCAA type of a scenario. But they've got all the parts, they're definitely locked in. And the production value of doing this stuff digital has been really exciting to see because everyone's been pivoting. So I'm really excited to see the production of this as well.
I am too. There's some of the pro leagues have been trying, to stick a toe in the water and figure it out. And you have to do that. And then it'll get better and better and better and better as we go. But I know the production behind a lot of esports is absolutely fantastic, and live events as well. Like you said, I didn't know what it was like to go to a live event, why it was so exciting until I went. And then I came back from a CSL tournament down here in Miami, CLS tournament down here in Miami. And the production was on the scale of the Miami Heat, which it was better, almost better. I mean, it was more interactive, more engaging. The casters were off the charts as far as their knowledge and their ability to present the material. I thought it was a fantastic experience. Going to the other article, which kind of is thematic to what you're talking about already, competition and connectivity, why gaming is under-monetized and where you should invest now. Mm-hmm. You were talking about connectivity in the college side, but this article is from Forbes, and it kind of talks about competition and connectivity. And why do you see that as an area right now that is maybe under monetized and such a great opportunity?
Yeah, I think just the way the world is evolving, the way that the world is evolving, people are really craving to be connected in some way. And esports really opens up an opportunity for people to get connected in authentic ways. I think long gone are the days of people thinking that it's just their 13-year-old all by themselves. My son is 13, and he has so many friends that he's built an entire community within playing games competitively that not only is it some of his classmates from school that he's really being able to speak to for hours a day, but also kids from all over the world and people in their late 20s that are embracing my child and being lovely, and I trust him in those spaces, and I listen in time and again as well. And I think any type of way that you can create systems and platforms that can increase that and do it in a safe way, that's where the future is at. For sure. I mean, just having a way for people to continually evolve and connect when you can't be face to face with people. And I don't know how much longer it's going to be where we really feel like we're able to be close with people again. Utilizing the esports world for that. I think people are using, I just had a call on Discord yesterday, and I think there's going to be a lot more of people utilizing esports-esque technology in their everyday.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move on to that, you mentioned something as being a mom with a 13-year-old, and my wife is even more on top of this than I am, but your 13-year-old can be gaming with anybody in the world. So how do you monitor that to a certain degree? Because we had an experience where it was last year. So my son was 13, and he came back, it was time for dinner, and my wife said, "Who are you playing with?" And he said, "So-and-so and so-and-so," and then some kid that he didn't even know. And she was like, "Wait a second, you don't know him? Like, he could be anybody." So, how do you monitor that? Because yes, you want to make friends just like anything else, but when you're talking to somebody else, and it could be anywhere in the world, and they're 25 or 30 or 35, you really don't know much about that person. And the thing I think you have to be careful about, right, is you don't want to provide too much information. If you're just playing the game and you're just talking about Fortnite but if now this person starts saying, "Oh, where do you live? Oh, where do you go to school?" and things like that. So how do you kind of monitor that? Because I think that's an important part of this next stage of where we're going, because the connectivity is so amazing.
I think as a parent, we start now having those conversations with our kids when they're 5 and 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old. I mean, kids are online all the time. And if your kids are on any type of app, you have to be aware that there's people who can infiltrate that, even if you don't even realize it. Like, oh, well, they're only friends with these people. Well, you wouldn't believe the weird message requests I get through Facebook Messenger and Instagram through these, request buttons. But I just trust, I trust my son's judgment at a really high level. We've had a lot of these conversations. I have listened in, even on YouTube. Like, he likes to watch people play video games on YouTube. He watches a lot of those streams through YouTube. If I'm listening and it's just like a ton of swear words, like, it'll irritate me. And I'll say, I don't like this one. Like, I know this guy's famous and everyone's listening, but I don't like it. Like, I don't want you listening to that. It's just kind of garbagey. But, he does game with people we've never met before. And he is in Discord channels and Discord rooms with people that are, complete strangers to us. And he's managed himself very well. I mean, a lot of times he's got a few friends in there, and then there's some hangers on. Have they had to kick people out of their Discord? Absolutely. Have there been odd things that have happened over the last 2 years? Yeah, there's some weird stuff, but you can't completely shelter your kids, or they're going to have a little bit of a shell shock when you're not there to oversee everything. I'm a pretty lenient parent. I've never had the monitoring tools that kind of track where your kids are. I have a daughter who's almost 20. She falls on her face a lot and has to get back up and redirect and recorrect. And I have to handle a lot of tears, but my parents didn't have technology to track me, and I'm damn glad that they didn't, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, I think the big communication, like you said, that's the big thing. You want to make sure that you're communicating. So as we kind of tie things up here, what are I always want to know, where do you, when you wake up in the morning, you go to bed at night, like, where are you finding your information? How are you staying on top of everything esports, everything gaming, and how does that? Are you 24/7 into the space?
No, I have a good balance in my life. I mean, I would say esports is probably 80% of the work that I do with sports technology, the other 20. It's definitely where my head is at. I'm learning from, a lot of the other places people learn. Esports Observer, reading that, Synopsis Esports for industry news, eFuse. I'm on that platform. I know that there's a lot of people really gravitating towards eFuse in the industry. LinkedIn, I've just got curated, some of the most amazing relationships of my entire career have been made through LinkedIn, and I'm definitely active reading there as well. And I go in waves. I'll go in where I'm learning mode, because I'm a lover of learning, and then I'm my head is down and I've got to get stuff documented and out the door. And I've been working on a project right now that I kind of sent out a draft yesterday, and it had my head in the sand for 4 days straight almost, because I really wanted to be thoughtful about the approach. It was basically just architecting out an outline for a sponsorship deck, and it needs to deliver. So I was really hyper-focused on it. I spent a lot of time on structure and what content really needs to be there. And so it just comes in ebbs and flows. I love the outdoors. I'm a huge person that, I love nature, and I grew up in nature. So that's where I find a lot of my grounding and my balance. I also love events and being around people. So that's been hard for me right now, not kind of being out 3 or 4 events a week. I'm just home most of the time. So calls like this have been kind of re-energizing me as well. But yeah, it's weird.
That's fantastic. It's great. I appreciate, again, we could talk and talk and talk and talk. And I just want to be respectful of your time, and I'm humbled by the knowledge that you have, all the things you're doing. Of course, I want to be involved in some of the things you're doing. I think there's opportunities to collaborate in the future. I think with the Ultimate Gamer, we're doing some really cool things right now that are going to come out in the next 2 or 3 months. So I'll look forward to sharing that with you as we go on. But yeah. That's
absolutely.
Yeah, I want to kind of let you go on your Friday, and it sounds like the weather's going to be nice up there this weekend. So I hope you enjoy it. And you can get outside, right? You can bike. You don't have to wear a mask when you're biking. At least I don't.
No, I mean, I'm really blessed. I live on a lake. We have a dock. So going outside, laying outside, I have a lot of friends who have boats. They don't have access. So for them to come, they'll go to the boat, the boat landing and bring a boat right up to the end of the dock, and I'll hop on. I've done that a couple of times now to go fishing with people. And then we're on a community bike path. And so there's a lot of activity outside our front door. When we go out the back door to the lake, out the front door is this walking path that the entire community is trying to get out and get the exercise and see the views. So I'm pretty lucky there. I have gone to the dog park a few times, and I'll go up to my mom lives on 53,000 acres of wildlife preserve, borders two sides of her house. So I've been up there to just kind of soak in the quiet sounds and the coyotes and watching turkeys, and the sandhill cranes are migrating right now. So it's a really beautiful place to kind of regroup your thoughts and reconnect with nature.
So important. So important. You should turn your camera at some point or go out on the porch and do your pods, or do your interviews and do your Zooms out there. We've got one of the guys on staff for us lives in Vancouver. And so he does a lot of his work outside on his deck, and there's a beautiful image of the lake and all the trees, the pine trees behind him. It's phenomenal. And it sounds to me like if you turned your camera right now, like I would be envious and maybe a little jealous of the lake view behind you.
You'd see the marina. People are finally starting to bring their boats to the marina. The marina's just a couple hundred yards from my house. So it's pretty nice. And that's why when I moved out of my downtown office and had to create a home office, I kind of walked through. I actually did like a FaceTime with one of my girlfriends, and I was like, well, I could use this room, or I could use this front room, or I could be in the sunroom. And she's like, you need to make your sunroom needs to be your office. So I had to move some furniture around and kind of take my sunroom. So I'm surrounded by windows on all three sides here, and just kind of turn it into a little pseudo office space. So it's nice because I can see the lake all day. But
nice, and it's still quiet. It's quiet, not too many disruptions.
There's maybe 4 pontoons that I can see from here that they're a little distracting, because I wouldn't mind being out on one. But other than that, we're good.
Nice. Well, I love the jacket. Enjoy the weekend, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll talk soon. Bye.
Ciao. I'd like to thank Rebecca for sharing her time, experience, and knowledge with us today. We enjoyed similar backgrounds, with traditional sports paving both of our careers to esports and gaming. However, she is a brand master and someone who really understands how to bridge the esports education gap with both experienced and novice executives looking at the space. As always, you can listen to her again, and you can also find time-stamped segments of the show, links to Rebecca's social pages, and more information about her company, projects, and media in the show notes. If you enjoyed our discussion, please let us know. Continue the conversation with me across all social platforms and become a part of the Ultimate Gamer community today by subscribing at ultimategamer.com. We release 2 shows a week on Tuesday and Thursday, so be the first to join us for some outstanding upcoming guests or dive back into the library of previous Level Up pods to hear some of the most brilliant minds in the space. Experts like President of Unified College Esports Association, Victoria Horsley, COO of Torque Esports, Darcy Lawrence, and First Sir Partners President and Esports Investor, Joey Brander, just to name a few. You can find all these episodes and more on the Ultimate Gamer website, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your pods. And finally, please like, rate, review the show. It helps us to reach the gaming community, to spread the word and share the wisdom of our guests, as well as some of the most thought-provoking stories in the industry. Shout out, as always, to the Ultimate Gamer. I look forward to being with you on the next Level Up podcast.